No free speech in Canada. Kevin J. Johnston arrested. In the USA and Canada, Antifa, BAMN, and SJWs are not the only anti-free speech, anti-civil liberties entities out there. And as much as they claim to be anti-authoritarian, they do cheer when the state and other big institutions like colleges take measures against liberty. They cheer when the Canadian government, for example, or the city of New York for that matter, take measures to force people to use the new gender pronouns. They support measures that outlaw criticism of Islam because, you know, Christianity is bad and Christians don't like Islam, so Islam must be good. You know, kind of like the Nazis invaded Russia, so Stalin must be good. By the way, notice that I'm not claiming that the sources I am using are accurate. I am merely reporting on what they are reporting. Canadian Kevin J. Johnston was arrested on July 24, 2017, according to multiple sources, and charged with one count of willful promotion of hatred against an identifiable group under the Criminal Code Section 319-2, according to CBC News. The Star reports, quote, Johnston, 45, was released on bail after a brief appearance in court Monday. The conditions of his release included an order to have no contact with 3 people whose names are under a publication ban. He was also ordered to stay 100 meters away from any mosque or Muslim community center in Ontario except for when traveling on the road. Outside the courtroom, he was defiant. Quote, I'm going to run for mayor against Bonnie Crombie next election, unquote, Johnston said. Quote, she can't stop me through the courts, unquote. Johnston does not have legal counsel yet. He will appear next September 8th. Johnston has previously ran for mayor and lost to Mississauga Mayor Crombie in 2014. He is best known for his strong views about the Muslim community, having opposed the construction of a mosque in Meadowvale, offered prize money for videos of students praying on Fridays, and protested against the federal anti-Islamophobia motion M103. By the way, what they just said right there, offered prize money for videos of students praying on Fridays, is very misleading. We'll get to that. Back to the Star. Last year, a story published on the Mississauga Gazette site resulted in Crombie filing a hate crime complaint with Peel Police. It was not immediately clear if that complaint prompted Monday's charges. For police to lay a hate crime criminal charge, a criminal offense must have occurred, such as an assault, damage to property, and hate or bias toward a victim must have motivated the criminal offense, unquote. Also, as far as I'm reading in the law, as far as I understand it, the whole thing must be approved by the Attorney General, whose office, the Star reports, quote, confirmed he received a formal request from Peel Police to lay the charge of willful promotion of hatred, unquote. The Huffington Post Canada reports merely that Johnston is charged with willful promotion of hatred. The Global News reports that he faces up to 2 years imprisonment if convicted, and indeed that is what the law itself says. Up to 2 years imprisonment. 2 years imprisonment for saying things.
They're telling guys like me, white-skinned, middle-aged males, that we are not allowed to have opinions that counter the opinions of people who are spewing hatred. It's a world gone mad. I mean, the lunatics truly are running the asylum. They really are.
Kevin J. Johnston is a critic of Islam and activist against Islamic hate, the owner of the Mississauga Gazette, a YouTuber, political candidate, provocateur, and so on. He is notorious for offering a cash reward of $1,000 for recordings of hateful speech in Islamic prayers in Peel Region school districts.
If we find any hate speech in there, and you're kind enough to tell us the student's name, the school, and the date you recorded it, it's $1,000 cash. Get your cameras, hide them in the rafters, hide them behind the basketball nets.
He has since doubled that reward to $2,000 and then raised it to $2,500. By the way, this is the same school district as this viral incident.
Shame on you, Mr. McDonald. Pedophilia in your school. That's a hate book. That's a book of hate you got there. Shame on you. Shame on you. No special privileges for anybody. You want special privileges? No special privilege for everybody.
And this right here.
Allowing Islamic prayers in schools and then worrying about whether or not the prayers accommodate or conform to Canadian values is like locking the barn door after the horses have already bolted. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
Woo! When the prayers are done in the school, the verses, verse 98, chapter 2, Allah is an enemy to those who reject faith.
Yes.
Yes.
3, chapter 3.
Yes, true, right?
50,
Allah is an enemy,
yes?
yes? Allah is Satan, that's why.
With a terrible agony in this world and in the hereafter. 3, chapter 151.
Taqiyya.
Cast terror
Taqiyya.
into the hearts
That's
of the
taqiyya.
unbelievers. Make
There's taqiyya here. You can see taqiyya.
these verses when they are
قاتلوهم حتى لا تكون فتنة ويكون الدين كله لله. I know Quran in Arabic.
If the poison that you are allowing
Another yes. Yes. Yes.
I think that we can, sir,
you shut up.
sir.
Fight them until the whole religion for Allah, until the whole word for Allah. Khilafah, Caliphate. This is hate literature. This should not be in school.
Hey, don't touch the woman.
Should not be in school.
Don't be rough with the woman.
CBC News reports that the Peel Region Police say that the charge follows, quote, concerns over information published on various social media sites, unquote. CBC News also reports that Sergeant Josh Coley stated that the charges stem from, quote, multiple incidents that the investigations were looking at, unquote. And, quote, it's not a private message that he was conveying, it was a public message. Anyone could hear, understand the messaging, so that's where the communicating hateful messages comes into play, unquote. He's referring here to number 2 of section 319 part 8 of Canada's criminal code, which prohibits communication, quote, other than in private conversation, unquote, that, quote, willfully promotes hatred against any identifiable group, unquote. And yes, the identifiable group in question is Muslim, says the sergeant, according to CBC News, which also reports, quote, Mississauga, Ontario Imam Ibrahim Hindi was one of those who helped to develop the current policy around Friday prayers in Peel schools. He says he hopes the charge against Johnston will deter others from acting in a hateful manner. Okay, we're just gonna say that as if that's not hypocrisy. It just takes one person to hear these types of It just takes one person to hear these types of hate-filled rhetoric and turn it into action and end lives, unquote, he told CBC News on Monday. Yeah, that's right. All it takes is for one person to go to a mosque and listen to your hate-filled rhetoric in your mosque to go out and to kill people. Pulse nightclub shooting, for example. Okay, this is routine. It is routine, even in the West, for mosques to preach hatred and for people to listen to that hate-filled rhetoric and then to go out and kill people because it says to do so in the fucking Quran. Oh, we're all just gonna say the emperor has brand new clothes, are we? We're all going to ignore the fact that he's freaking naked, are we? Is that how we're going to do this, huh? We're all going to look at each other and silently nudge and wink. Oh, we're not allowed to mention the elephant in the room, which is that Islam itself is hate-filled rhetoric? That's what we're going to do here, huh? And we're all going to play along. Is that so, media? We're all just going to play along as if this isn't a glaring hypocrisy? Oh, this is absolutely insane. It is insane how people all agree to just lie to each other and themselves about this. It's insane. It is absolutely insane. At the end of the article, Imam Hindi is quoted as stating, quote, hatred does exist. It's alive and well in Islam. Hatred does exist, it's alive and well in Canada, and we have to be vigilant in terms of stopping it because it can get out of hand, unquote. Wow. I could just take that quote and use that as a fairly good argument against Islam. So let's see, I could say hatred does exist, it's alive and well in the West, and we have to be vigilant in terms of stopping it because it can get out of hand. I'm talking about Islam. Wow, the hypocrisy here is just, it's stunning. So the Quran is okay. The Quran, which is hateful to the core, which calls for violence, which calls Jews pigs, which is sexist.
What do you think about this vision of heaven that Suleiman has? I mean, it sounds like it was kind of constructed a little bit, if I may say so, by men.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that every man is going to have 2 wives. That means there have to be twice as many women who believe this as there are men. Otherwise, there won't be enough to go round, or we'll all have to marry more than one, or something like this. It's not quite clear.
which says to slay the unbelievers wherever you find them. That's okay. Wow. This imam has the proverbial log in his eye while he decries the splinter in Johnston's. And yes, Johnston is not entirely innocent, at least in my view, but we'll get to that. Speaking of hypocrisy, Global News reports that the executive director of the National Council of Canadian Muslims, Iqra Khalid, if I'm saying that correctly, states, quote, "This charge is long overdue," unquote, and, quote, "We welcome this development as an important step towards the safeguarding of our communities from the unchecked hatred that both harms social cohesion and threatens the safety of the community members," unquote. Yeah, tell me about it. Yes, the hatred that is your religion. By the way, I noticed that this article from CBC News first states that Johnston offered a reward for, quote, "recordings of Muslim students during prayer," unquote. Then later specifies, quote, "recordings of Muslim students at Peel Region schools, quote, spewing hate speech during Friday prayers," unquote, unquote. Then later they call it recordings of, quote, "Muslim students praying," unquote. So, are they equating Muslim student prayers with spewing hate speech, or are they just blowing a smokescreen here? Which is it, Muslim student prayers or hate speech in Muslim student prayers? I have to wonder how many people in that school district believe that Johnston is offering a cash reward simply for Muslim student prayers, rather than for a recording of hate speech in Muslim student prayers.
First, you are all aware of the fact that I'm giving $1,000 of my own money away to anyone that brings me video of Islamic hate speech taking place during sermon time in public schools in Peel Region.
Well, it seems many of them believe that he's just offering a reward just for prayers. As CBC News reports, quote, "University of Toronto student Noor Al-Adib," no offense if I'm saying that incorrectly, says that when Johnston's video calling for a bounty on recordings of Muslim students praying emerged, it had a quote-unquote domino effect of fear among students. Quote, "We claim that we are multicultural and we claim that we protect everybody and we thrive off our diversity, but the actions don't follow up with the words that folks are saying," unquote. She said, quote, "Why does it take so long for us to take action on things we know are wrong," unquote. Johnston is offering a reward for a recording of hateful speech. Okay? Hateful speech. Now, some of these people know that he wants a recording of hateful speech, not just prayers, but hateful speech in the prayers. For them to refuse to acknowledge that he wants hateful speech and not just prayers suggests that they know that there is hateful speech in those prayers. CBC News says that in an email they received from Johnston, he states that he, quote, "will continue to fight against M103, the non-binding motion condemning Islamophobia and religious discrimination which passed in the House of Commons in March," unquote. Note that he was not accused of violating M103, which is about preventing Islamophobia on paper, but also, we all know, about preventing valid criticism of Islam. But apparently it's Section 319(2) of the Criminal Code that he is accused of violating. Reportedly, he appeared in court on July 24th and his next court date is scheduled for September. Apparently, his Twitter and YouTube accounts were suspended, and he is now using alternate accounts. This is according to CBC News and Huffington Post Canada. Ezra Levant for Rebel Media reports that his Twitter and his YouTube were deleted, not just suspended. Johnston is also using the platform BitChute to host his videos. Of course, there are links for all this below. CBC News and Huffington Post Canada report that Ontario's Attorney General Yassir Naqvi said in a written statement, quote, "In a multicultural and inclusive province like Ontario, the promotion of hatred stands in direct opposition to our fundamental values of equality and diversity," unquote. And, quote, "Hate crimes are, by their very nature, serious offenses, and because their impacts can be devastating, spreading from the individual through the society." My goodness! "Through the social fabric of our communities and society as a whole," unquote. And he writes this as if the glaring hypocrisy is not looming large as the elephant in the room which they want to make completely illegal to talk about. Oh my, how it amazes me that people can just, I mean, they might as well go up there and say, well, up is really down. Aren't we right? Yeah, sure, up is down.
Up is down, yes. I was the first person to say that up is down, and anyone who says that up is not down, well, we gotta go after them, because up is down, of course, oh yeah.
simply amazing. Simply amazing. This is
amazing.
Global News writes about Johnston, quote, "In recent months, he has become known for his remarks about Muslims, particularly in his opposition to an anti-Islamophobia motion in Parliament and weekly prayers in Peel District schools," unquote. Global News also writes, quote, "He also demonstrated outside the office of Mississauga MP Iqra Khalid to protest M103, an anti-Islamophobia motion she had introduced in the House of Commons. Iqra Khalid needs to be deported as an enemy," his website said. Muslim leaders in the Toronto area had grown increasingly concerned about his videos singling out of their faith, which the website had called as evil gets, and a military doctrine that needed to be banned. Quote, "Today, the Muslim community of Peel can sleep safer knowing that there are consequences for promoting hatred and inciting violence against us," unquote, said Rabia Khadir, executive director of the Muslim Council of Peel. Quote, "We hope that these charges will serve to deter future assaults on our community," unquote. Okay. Yeah. What about the non-Muslim community? What about the kuffar? The rats, as you call us? What about the infidel community in Peel? What about them? What about their safety? What about their peace of mind? Oh no, we don't care about them, you know, because they're not a marginalized group on blah 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 blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah. The sources that I'm using in this video state that the Peel Regional Police conducted a 5-month-long investigation due to multiple complaints on Johnston. Johnston has produced a lot of content across various platforms, including his many videos, and I don't have the time to view them all, but if you want, you can see the links below, of course. At least one source says that he's a white supremacist. As Joan Biden writes for the Globe and Mail, quote, "Some federal conservative leadership contenders have given interviews to a self-proclaimed online journalist who regularly boasts accolades of the superiority of white people, along with diatribes against immigration in general and Muslims in particular," unquote. Now, I don't know about you, but these days, when someone is accused of being a white supremacist in the media, my first thought is, oh well, he's probably not a white supremacist then, because they almost always get that wrong. Not that I am claiming that he is not a white supremacist, but I would be quite surprised if he is. At any rate, looking over his video titles on YouTube and BitChute, I don't see anything indicative of being a white supremacist, but to be fair, I'm going mostly on the titles alone. I haven't seen almost all of his videos. But I am going to call out this quote-unquote journalist, Joan Bryden, and say that she is a white supremacist. Joan, I'm going to send this to you, so I know you're listening. Joan Bryden, you are a white supremacist who regularly posts accolades to the superiority of white people, and I will offer the same amount of evidence as you did in your accusation. That is, zero. Zero evidence. Just an accusation. So there you go. How do you like that taste of your own medicine? Now, I did say earlier that Johnston is not entirely innocent. I noted that he has a proverbial splinter in his own eye, at least. Why do I say that? Well, there's this, which I find rather disgusting, but here you go.
Only thing that your actions can do is cause a civil war within these borders. Maybe then you'll be happy. Because I can tell you this, there's a lot of gun nuts in this country, and you're pissing them off. You don't want to do that. There's a select type of Canadian that even I'm afraid of. And those are not the guys that you want to try to bring Sharia law to. But hey, if you think that that's the right way to go ahead. I'm a journalist and I'll be there to see you on the ground crying and complaining about the fact that someone shot you because they disagree with Sharia law and the rape of children. Yeah, and I'll be there writing the story with a big fat smile on my face, thinking, hey, Iqra Khalid gets shot by a Canadian patriot.
Now, that's not a call for violence, but that's really low. I sure hope he would not actually do such a thing if that were to happen in real life. So there you go, folks. I'm not praising the character of Johnston in this video. I'm merely talking about the principle of liberty. I don't know much about his views, and that's okay because his views are beside my points. Now, in the USA, unless he was calling for violence, he would have been exercising his right to free speech. But I realize that he may have broken the law in his land of Canada there, as I've detailed earlier, although I'm going to contest that later. I'd like to make 2 points here. 1, the stark, raving, mad hypocrisy of all these people crying about Johnston's alleged hate propaganda against a religion that some of them must know is indefensibly and indispensably hateful, which calls for violence, and so on, is unacceptable. We must point this hypocrisy out. Number 2, this is a dangerous step down that slippery slope. Tommy Robinson, for example, arrested in the middle of the night in the UK, supposedly for hate speech against Muslims. You know, folks, dubious charges, new laws, witch hunts, the knock on the door in the middle of the night by the secret police. Don't let this go any further. Stop it. It must be stopped. Anyway, Johnston may have a good defense. I noticed that in section 319 it states that an accused party is not guilty if, among other things, quote, he establishes that the statements communicated were true, unquote. Quote, if the statements were relevant to any subject of public interest, the discussion of which was for the public benefit, and if on reasonable grounds he believed them to be true, or if in good faith he intended to point out, for the purpose of removal, matters producing or tending to produce feelings of hatred towards an identifiable group in Canada, unquote. Well, the kuffar, that is, we dirty rats, we infidels, we non-Muslims, we're an identifiable group, aren't we? Okay, Islam expresses hatred against us, and specifically Jews, so this to me would be a viable defense that Johnston can use. But you know, things seem to be so corrupt at this point that I think that part of the law is just going to be conveniently ignored, and if somebody brings it up in defense, there'll be a lot of saber rattling, pun intended, to shut that part of the defense up. But Islam gets a free pass. Under the acceptable defenses of this, it says, quote, if in good faith the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. But you know, Islam gets a free pass. It could be as hateful as it wants to be. It could just read the Qur'an, which is itself hate speech, and that's fine, that's okay, because, well, hypocrisy. Now, there seems to be a tension going on here that could be applied to this case. 319 does say that among acceptable defenses is, quote, if in good faith the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text, unquote. So there you go. You can, according to this law, you can express something that is based on an opinion about religion. Why can't Johnston use this defense? Of course, we don't know exactly what he's charged with, but depending on what he's charged with, he might be able to use that as his defense. But then there is the other part, and I'll read it again, and I'll emphasize the other part I'm talking about. Quote, if in good faith the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text, unquote. So if it's based on a belief in a religious text, it's okay. So all the hate in the Quran apparently is okay to express. You get a free pass. Notice that it's like, okay, here's a free pass not just for religion, because not all religions have hatred in their texts. It's a privilege specifically for the most hateful of religions. The more hateful your religious text is, the more exemption it gets under this law. You can certainly find lots of hatred in the 3 Abrahamic religions, especially far and above, by a lot, Islam, the Quran. Don't believe me? Okay, I'll have to do it again. I've done this so many times. I'm gonna pull the verses out and show them to you. I very much hope, and I do think this will happen, in a few years, we'll look back at this and be like, how could people just make these bold-faced lies like Islam is a religion of peace or deny that it says kill the infidels? How could people do that with a straight face, even on television? Well, you know, the social climate was
set up in such a way that it was just, there was this pressure and people just knew that they didn't lie.
Groupthink. This is groupthink. Everyone knows the elephant in the room is violent jihadism, cloaked in Islamism, a cloak of civility, of encroaching upon people's rights. But we all know that the scimitar is hidden underneath this cloak. We all know the elephant is in the room, and yet we all refuse to talk about it. And if anybody mentions it, they're bad. No, Islam is bad. I will never stop saying this. Unless Islam suddenly transforms and becomes good, I will never stop saying this. You can put us in jail, you can threaten us with violence, you can attack us, and you can demonize us all you want. It will not stop us. We will never stop stating the truth. Folks, I am considering changing my name and my channel name from Just an Anti-Theist to something else. People have trouble saying, spelling, and understanding Just an Anti-Theist. I may change it to Just Incognito. You know, Just Incognito. Tell me what you think. So, after making well over 100 videos, most of which I've spent days on, and over 500,000 views, over a few years I've made not much more than $100, which I would imagine breaks down to a few cents or maybe even a fraction of a cent per hour. So, I finally signed up for Patreon. There's a link to it right here on my channel banner and in the description below of this video and every other future video. Please consider donating something so that we can continue doing what we do, because at this rate we can't keep it up for long without your donations. Also, if you'd like me to thank you by name for donating, please let me know and I will do so. YouTube is problematic and they would rather not have YouTubers like myself criticizing the left-wing sector of the establishment of which they are a part. You see, I'm always being warned by YouTube, demonetized for not having content that's deemed to be advertiser friendly. I've had videos taken off YouTube for inappropriate content, and that inappropriate content is always criticism of the far left. And I'm always afraid of my channel being shut down suddenly without warning, so I made a backup channel called Just Infidel. You know, Just Infidel. See the link below for that. Please subscribe to it. This will be the backup channel, and also I'll be uploading older videos to that channel that you may want to see for the first or perhaps the second time. So scroll down, click the links for that, subscribe to me also on vid.me, which is like YouTube but without the bullshit. Let's not let YouTube be a monopoly. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll be notified when I upload new videos to YouTube. Also scroll down, click the link, subscribe to me on minds.com, which is like YouTube and Facebook but without the censorship or the clutter and advertisements of the latter. Also, there's Gab.ai, another social media platform, the one with the frog. Shadoway. Also, please make sure you are subscribed to me on YouTube. If you think you've already subscribed and click that little bell icon, you may want to check again, especially if you haven't seen a video from me in a few days. People are being mysteriously unsubscribed from channels, some big YouTube glitch, who knows. But many YouTubers are complaining about this, so please go through your subscriptions and make sure you actually are subscribed to your channels. If you haven't seen a video from your favorite YouTube in a while, it may be because you've been unsubscribed due to some glitch or something. Finally, lately on YouTube, a great number of comments are getting lost. For many comments, we don't even get a notification. When we do get a notification, sometimes we can't actually respond to the comment. So I'm not ignoring your comment, there's just problems with the system. Okay folks, thanks for watching. Peace, love, freedom, and equality.